So today we're going to be showing you how to remove the soft top out of an NB Miata. So a little overview on how the top is physically installed in the car and the tools we'll need to remove it. We'll need a ratchet or a driver with 10mm and 12mm sockets. The 10mm needs to be a deep well. We'll need a Phillips screwdriver and a clip popper. Now there's a couple different things holding the soft top to the car. The main thing is the frame is being held with 3mm bolts holding it to the side of the car, so we'll need to remove these panels right here or peel them back. And then the back of the top, the fabric, is being held to the car with 3 metal brackets that are held in by a series of 10mm nuts back there. And of course we'll have the connector, since this is an NB, for the defroster. But let's get to it. Now the first thing we want to do is remove this factory wind blocker. That is held in by 4 Phillips screws, 2 on each side. If you have an 0405, you might have the Bose wind blocker, which will have an extra connector, an electrical connector right there that'll need to be removed, but otherwise it comes out the same. Now if we move the seat forward, a little bit more access, we want to remove these plastic pillars right here. Now the first thing we want to do is remove these Phillips screws that hold this little bracket into place. Two of them right there, and this little bracket pulls up and out of the way. Now with that out of the way, we can go ahead and remove this little piece of weather stripping. It just pulls out of the door sill. Just be careful not to bend it, they do bend easily. Now basically the only thing holding this in place is we'll remove this little cover for the seat belt. We'll remove this little guy right here, which holds the 2 pieces of the plastic panel together. And this little clip right here, which you just remove with your hands. And now there's a series of clips back here that hold it in place, but they're just something you just pop out. And to get that out completely, so this little grommet right here holds the seat belt in place and the plastic panel is out. Now that exposes the 3 12mm bolts that hold the frame physically to the car. This is the pivot point right here for where it gets installed into the car. Now an alternative method, instead of taking out this whole panel right here, we could also just peel it back. Once again, we remove these 2. Get this little guy out of the way. Peel back on here, and we have just enough room. If you wanted to, you can have a shallow 12mm socket on there, and you can access all 3 of these bolts without having to remove the whole panel. Now before we get in the car to start removing all the bolts back here, we want to remove these little clips, or more accessible with the top down, that hold the front of the rain rail in place. They just pop out with a clip popper. This is also what holds this little piece in if you ever need to take it out. Now the front of the rain rail is loose. So if it wasn't already hot enough, now it's time to really sweat it out, especially if you're in a hot climate like ours in Florida here. So what we want to do is, I like to put the seats forward and get in this area right here and raise the top. This gives us access to everything we need back here. We're just going to peel back this carpet. So what we need to do is just remove all these little clips that hold it back here. All the clips are out. Now we can access those 3 brackets with the 10mm nuts that are holding them in place. Now before we get to those, first thing I want to do is disconnect the defroster, which is just the cables held in place by a couple of little plastic clips, and the connector for it is right over here. So now that's ready to go. Now let's get started with all of these. Just make sure you don't Don't lose those. Now with all of those out of the way, this rail is ready to come out. The other rails right here on the side may prevent it from coming out on its own, but just be mindful when you're installing this back on the car that the channel itself is at the bottom, that you're not installing these upside down. So let's continue getting the easy ones out. Now all of these have been very accessible to something like this at this point, but the one all the way inside here is the one that has a little bit less room. So in this case, I like to just use a ratchet itself right in there. Now there is another way to access that last one right there. If you see this access hole right here, it'll allow you access to use an extension and get all the way through. You just have to remove this extra panel right here. I just prefer to do it by hand. And now that all the bolts are out, now we can remove these right here. Now I'm just going to let these hang out in here. If we're going to be installing a new top, no sense in taking them out of the car. We'll just let them right here. Now this is the ever famous rain rail. This is what collects the water that falls on top of the top, collects it in this channel right here and directs it to the drains right over there. Now the rain rail is just attached to the car like that. So if we remove it carefully, if we want to reuse it or just not break anything, gets a little tricky towards the ends, but there we go. Now we continue peeling back. Now the soft top is completely free aside from the 3 12mm bolts on each side. All right, now we can take a little breather outside of the car, remove these bolts right here. The good thing about these is if they do fall, like that one just did right there, they actually can't go further into the sheet metal of the car, so you can fish them back out. Now if you chose not to take the plastic panels out, in this case you can reach in here with your ratchet and shallow socket, get these out. And we're all done with the bolts. Now if you've made sure you've removed the rain rail completely all the way around, you are ready to, in this case, get an assistant to help you lift it up. So we're ready to lift the top out. The only thing is, I had forgotten previously that on an NB, these little plastic panels right here kind of hang up on the frame. So if you remove that little clip, the plastic panel comes out, and now the frame is free to lift out of the car. So now with the help of an assistant, you go ahead, get the frame out, make sure nothing is caught, and there you go. The top removal is complete. Now that we got the top out, before we put another top on here, it's a perfect opportunity to get these drains cleaned. As you can see, this one has a bunch of trash and debris in there, and if those drains are not cleaned, I like to use like a wire hanger and some water and just make sure everything is coming out the bottom. Keep pouring water in there and it comes out clean. You're good to go. Basically because if you can use all the new rain rails in the world you want, if this is clogged up, it's still going to get water inside the car, and you definitely don't want that. So if you're not building a race car and you plan on putting a top back in your car, the way I like to do it is to do it with the soft top in a horizontal folded manner like this. This will allow you this little stud right there, no bolt goes on there, but the curved part of this bracket is to go over that stud. Once it's over that stud, then you can lift up and down on here, and that'll allow you to line up the 3 bolt holes right there. That's the biggest tip I can give you for installing this back on there. This wasn't very clear before, but here is the stud we're talking about and the little curved part of the bracket that needs to go over that bolt. Now you can move the frame up and down to get these 3 bolts in there. And there you have it. That concludes the removal of the soft top from an NB Miata. The same tutorial can pretty much be used for an NA Miata. It's basically the same structure. You can use this top on an NA Miata. The only difference is it doesn't have the wind blocker, doesn't have the defroster wires, and it probably has the cockpit brace if it's a 94 to 97. Very small differences, so you can use them for either or. If you like this video, please make sure to give it a like, and thank you for watching.